Welcome to the Graybeard Chronicles podcast. Your hosts, Brian Halstead and Kevin Harkins, are two gray-bearded patriots who love God, their family and friends, and their country. The Graybeards are here to inspire, inform, and educate you on a myriad of topics they are passionate about. Brian and Kevin have a strong desire to share this with you to help you live your best life. Sit back and enjoy this amazing podcast as the Graybeards pass along the wisdom of the ages.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Graybeard Chronicles. I'm Brian Halstead.
And I'm Kevin Harkins.
And Kevin, we're here to pass along some wisdom of the ages. What the heck does that mean?
We're not perfect, but we do have gray beards. And that means we've got some significant life experience, some life lessons, and some perspectives that are worthy of passing along.
Well, I think that sums it up nicely. Let's get to it. Kevin, what's going on, sir?
We're getting to it.
We are getting to it.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good to see you. Good to be here.
Yeah, nice to see you. Good to be seen.
Happy New Year again.
Yeah. It's not too long to say that. Is there some kind of a timeline?
Probably.
After what, 2 weeks?
I'm going to say, halfway through January.
Once it goes into double-digit days in January, then you got to knock that shit off.
Oh,
so tomorrow.
Tomorrow you can't say
We're
it
done.
anymore. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Fair
Still
enough.
Early in the new year.
So what's going on? What's new and exciting in your world?
Wake up every day, thankful that I have another one. And I don't know why that's on my mind, but it is. Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's because I spent some time thinking about people who didn't make it through the year 2022. Sometimes you do that, right?
Yeah, we all, the sad but true fact is the older we get, the more people we tend to know that depart this physical life.
Right.
That can always cause you to think about it a little bit.
Indeed.
Ponder your mortality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good way to say it. So thankful to be here for another day.
Amen to that. Got to be, I think, waking up every day is a good way to be.
Yeah. Pour your heart and soul into every moment.
Not everybody does that, right? Not everybody wakes up in the morning. So, yeah, be thankful for that. And don't squander the day away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, here we are, ready to talk about something. I don't know what we're talking about.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I do. You're right. I do.
That is not an accurate statement. You do know what we're talking about.
I don't know what you're going to say. I know what I'm going to say.
I do. I know what I'm going to say.
Oh, yeah.
And I know what we're talking about.
You know what I'm going to say?
I do not.
Okay. All right.
We have not discussed that. We don't do that.
Correct.
We just share the topic. And the topic for this episode is effective public speaking. Check that out.
Yeah, that was a little off the beaten path.
Yeah.
It was.
I think it's something that we don't necessarily, at least the two of us don't think about, regularly. And at the same time, I know and have read in times past that, it is a big fear, right, among the American public. In fact, I've heard it said that it's the number one fear among the American public, greater than death, greater than dying, which, and you may have heard this before, that, that means that if you're at a funeral, you'd actually rather be the one in the casket than the one giving the eulogy. Now, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you say it out loud, but really that's a big fear for a lot of people. And there's some cool ways to kind of break it down and make it a little easier.
But isn't that an interesting little factoid that it's such a fear among people? And if you really think about it,
why is that?
It's a curious thing, because I can sit here and chat with you or anybody in a one-on-one conversation, and everybody is pretty much this way.
Yeah.
Not 100%, but pretty much everybody is. I can hold a one-on-one conversation with you, be totally comfortable, talk about anything, not worry about a thing. I'm not worried about being judged by you. I'm just having a conversation.
Right.
And not a fear in the world.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden
I say, hey, Kevin, you know what? That is some great information. You mind walking up here in front of the group and sharing that with the group, and everybody, you're like,
I know
it's different. It changes the dynamic instantly.
It does change the dynamic. So it's a curious thing, and believe me, I'm not immune to it. I'm not saying that I've got this figured out, because I probably
I've
done it a good bit and do it a good bit. So it does get easier the
Yeah.
more you do it,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. It's
still,
it's kind of like riding a bike. You don't crash as much after you've done it a bunch of times.
there you go.
Yeah.
But what brought this to your mind?
Really, the reason it came to my mind is it's one of those that I had written on a list. And as far as topics that we could talk about in this format and things that I think will be helpful for people that are listening, because there are folks that while they might not set out to be, a speaker as a job, as a career, at the same time they may need to speak for their job or in some type of a public setting for, a hobby that they have or at church or, saying grace for a large gathering or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you as you were saying that, you reminded me of probably one of the most valuable lessons I've learned about what to speak about, because I'm sure that's what you're going to talk about. In fact, before I tell you the story, tell me what it is that you would want to share with our audience about effective public speaking.
Well, it's kind of broad, right? So it has to do, the first part has to do with the subject matter.
Right.
And, the most important thing for the subject matter is to know it. Know your material. You don't necessarily have to be an expert in it. And at the same time, you need to have a good working knowledge of what it is you're talking about.
Right.
And I think that, that's kind of the foundation.
Okay, I agree with you. In fact, that is precisely what this experience that I had was. I went to an event. It was a big formal event with a large crowd, large meaning, a couple hundred people. I was not the speaker. I was in the audience. And there was a journalist who was well known. This is down when I lived in Virginia Beach.
Right.
There was a journalist who lived down there who was well known as a journalist. And he had received a request to come and be a keynote speaker at this event. And they wanted him to speak on, I think it was leadership or something like that. They asked him, "Can you come? You're a big name in town. Everybody will, sit and listen." And
because those two are connected. I mean, if you're a well-known journalist, you know about leadership.
Well, he told the story, and that's how he started his talk. And he started with, "They asked me to come and speak about leadership, and I'm not going to speak about leadership because I'm not an expert on leadership. I'm going to talk about what I know, and that is journalism."
Good on him.
And it was, I remember thinking, and his whole point was, when you are public speaking, talk about something that you know about, something that you don't have to go do a bunch of research and study and figure it out. No, this is a topic that you can have a casual conversation with anybody, one-on-one.
And that depends on scenario, right? So to your point, in that type of scenario, yeah, absolutely talk about something that you are familiar with, something you're an expert, quote unquote expert at. I think there are those scenarios, maybe in a work environment, career environment, where, you have to do a presentation on something that isn't, maybe it's not something you have committed to memory or your passion that you can just rattle off and share with people. You might have to follow along and use some presentation materials like slides and things like that.
Of course.
So yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be exceptions to that, but I absolutely agree with you. The guy did a great job by saying, not talking about leadership.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about something that I know about. So really, that is the single biggest rule. And even in a work environment where you're doing something like that, it's still part of your work, and you're still
you're not completely ignorant to it.
You're not completely ignorant, and so that is it. If you don't remember any other rules about effective public speaking, and you just remember that one, you'll probably be all right.
Yeah, know your stuff, because people are gonna, they'll see right through your BS if you don't know, and they'll challenge you on it, and you'll lose them.
Right.
Absolutely lose them.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, that's the foundation. Know your stuff. And then, you said an example earlier of, you and I can sit here and have this conversation right now, no problem.
Right.
And then, it changes when you go and stand in front of a group. Well, one of the things that I recommend that people do to get more comfortable with public speaking is, depending upon the scenario, right? Because it's not always set up where you can do this. Sometimes they want the speaker, kept away from the crowd backstage, and then they introduce them, and the first time they see him, the audience sees them is when they walk out on the stage. Providing it's not that scenario, and you have the opportunity to interact with the crowd, beforehand,
Yeah.
engage people in conversation.
Yeah.
Because that tears that barrier down. Now you're not talking to strangers.
Right.
You're talking to Sue and Bill and John and Betty and these other people that you met out there in the lobby before the event started. And so, there's some familiarity there, and it helps you feel a little more comfortable.
It really does. It's a great way to do it. And if you can't do that, another trick that people have told me is just pick a person, whether, when you're walking up to the podium to give the talk, pick a person in the audience and just pretend that you're having a soul conversation with them.
Yeah.
And again, it becomes much easier at that point.
Yeah, and it's important to, one of the things I have noted is make eye contact with your audience. So that's part of having a conversation, is making eye contact with people, and you can change it up, right? So I wouldn't encourage you to have, pick out one person and have only eye contact with them the whole time. Move it around a little bit. But really, yeah, that's a great example. Just act like you're talking to that person right there,
Right.
and then that person right there.
Yeah.
So you're not looking at this big, huge audience.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point.
So a point that I would like to make also that I think helps is and I'll just call it, for lack of a better term, good energy. If you go up there and you're afraid and you're, very sort of almost introverted, and it's very obvious that you don't want to be there because you're fearing this.
Right.
You don't want to you want to come in with, I know this topic. I know what I'm talking about. You confident, with passion.
Yeah.
And you do that by not being uncomfortable. I know it's easy to say, but again, if you do some of these tricks that you just talked about, talk to people beforehand.
Right.
So then you're actually talking to people and you're not talking to a crowd. And then, you come in with, I've identified somebody that I want to have a conversation with about this topic. And if you know what you're talking about, all of a sudden it becomes much easier to come in with energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's lots of different public speaking environments, if you will. A lot of people initially think about standing up in front of an audience. I see, and I've seen this happen myself. I'll use a server at a restaurant as an example. That's public speaking. When you come up to the table and you greet the people at the table, introduce yourself, tell them about your specials for the evening or what, that's public speaking. And it always causes me to shake my head when the server tells you up front, hey, I'm new at this. I don't want to hear that, right? Don't show your cards. Don't tell people, because they may have just screwed themselves out of a phenomenal tip. Because if you, and a big, huge if, I feel about the word if, but if it's absolutely necessary for you to disclose that information because you are new and you just feel like your life's not going to continue if you don't tell the people that you're waiting on that, wait till you're done. Wait till you've delivered fabulous service and, bring them the check, and then, feel free to say something like, hey, I'm new at this. And if there's any feedback you could offer me about, what I did good, what I did bad, how I could do things differently, I would greatly appreciate it. That's a cool time to offer that up, right? Because then what you set the table for, pardon the pun there, is, you've now told these people that may just absolutely be delighted with the service that you've already given them, and then they find out that you're new at this. They might be more willing to give you a better tip in thanking you and congratulating you for your successful performance as a server that evening.
I won't ask you to tell me right now, but clearly you have some stories along this line. That's why those examples came to, I would imagine.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I like eating out.
Okay.
And I evaluate people like that because it's a public speaking thing. And I just, it irks me when people are like, I'm new at this and I don't think don't tell me that,
Yep.
I don't want to know it.
Absolutely. Well, here's another one that I think, and probably for me, the final one, because if I think these 3 points that I'm making, if you do those, you're going to be fine. And that is, how many times do you watch a public speaker? And it doesn't matter what. It can be, if you're into sports, you're watching the sportscaster, or if you're at church, you're watching the preacher, or if you're at work, you're watching the boss.
Right.
But you walk away with, wow, that person was really good. I really like the way that they presented. I want to be like them and I want to present like them. And all of a sudden you find yourself in a circumstance where you get up there, and what you realize when you get up there is you're not them. And I'm not saying you can't practice and practice and practice and get better.
Right.
But what I'm saying is be yourself.
Yeah.
Have your own personality. Be real. Don't try to be somebody else. Nobody is you better than you.
Yeah, we've talked about the
Yes.
odds of you being you
Right.
are really high. It's yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Don't get up there and try to be somebody else. Now you could certainly, maybe borrow some tactics from somebody.
Of course.
But man, it's important to be authentic because people will see right through it if you're not.
And I think borrowing tactics is probably a really good, not probably is a really good way to say it. Because, yeah, you want to learn tips and tricks from others, for sure. But you don't want to be them. And that's some people just, like, this person is a great presenter and I want to be just like him.
Yeah.
Be just like yourself. Be you.
And don't, I know you'll appreciate this, right? Don't, and this is different types of scenarios, right? So if you're doing a keynote, you're probably not using PowerPoint. But if you're in a situation where, you're doing a sales presentation or you're at work or something, don't PowerPoint people to death.
Yeah.
That just, and if it's absolutely mandatory that you have to use PowerPoint to get your point across or provide some visual images and so on that people need to see, then just make sure that you are providing the dialogue that goes along with the slides and not reading the slides. That is, because I'm like, why are you even here? I don't need you. Just put those slides up there. I can read them myself.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, not a good thing to do. Yeah. And then lastly, I think just as an overall framework tool, and this goes more so to a period of instruction, and I think you can apply it in various formats in really any venue, is the rule I like, or the kind of the philosophy of tell. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And
I've not heard it put that way before.
And it just kind of wraps it all up.
Okay.
Nice little bow.
It is. That's a good format to do it in, and that's precisely the one that I use. But I just never heard it called tell.
And I know you do, because you always do the summarize and at the end, and tell.
Cool. All right, I'm going to adopt that. T cubed.
There you go. That's cool.
Yes, effective public speaking. It's important in life. You do it all the time, and do your best to.
And rehearse it in your head. Oh, this is important. Rehearse it in your head, but in your head is important because you do not want to give a scripted presentation. Not a fan of those. Don't come up there with your 3x5 cards and start rolling through them. If you need them for reminders, lay them out. Preferably somewhere that isn't, readily seen by everybody. But, you might need some reminders of this is point 1, this is point 2, this is point 3. And, it helps to steer your recollection, if you will.
Yeah.
But absolutely don't get up there and give a scripted presentation. It's much better, to your point. It's authentic. It flows better when you're just up there being you, having a conversation about these particular things that a lot about.
Yep. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing up the topic. It was good to remind ourselves of, and I don't do it perfectly. I don't do any of this stuff perfectly, but it's good.
It's a work in progress. You'll always, like when anything else, a sporting event, motorcycle ride, anything you do, you always have the opportunity to go back and do a debrief or critique yourself and figure out, what I did great, what I did not so great, and how am I going to do it differently next time.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Cool.
That's all I got.
Well, thank you. Good conversation, man.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
All right. I'm going to do this now. I'm going to punch the microphone first, and then I'm going to reach over here and hit this button. And say something like this. That's not really scripted. No matter who you are, where you are, what you're doing, make sure between this podcast and the next, you take time to enjoy the ride.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Graybeard Chronicles. Please subscribe so you'll receive notification when new episodes are available. To learn more about the Graybeards, visit their website, graybeardchronicles.com.